Hello class, welcome to another Ed Puzzle video. Today we're going to do Unit 4C, Trig equation. And as you can see some for our example, the whole objective for today is to solve for our theta. So let's begin with the example 1, which is add and subtract. So we have cosine theta plus 1 equals 0. So the first thing we want to do is, it's the same thing as trying to solve for x or theta, which you want to isolate the variable. And so you would subtract 1 on both sides. Once you do that, you would get cosine theta equals -1. And to get theta isolated, you would have to do the inverse of cosine. Once you do that, your answer would be theta equals, and then cosine, an inverse cosine of -1 is pi. And then when you put your answer, you put pi and then you plus 2 and pi, because this will represent every full revolution after. And then you can also put your answer as pi or 360 degrees. But if you opt to use 360 degrees, that means you will have to, or not 360, sorry about that, 180. That means that you would have to put plus 180 or 360n, okay? So it'd be something like this. All right. So for example 2, this one you will do on your own. Once you are finished, we will continue on through the video. Now that you finish part B, let's see how you did. So first thing first, you want to isolate the variable. And then I know that secant theta is the same as 1 over cosine, or we could just do the reciprocal of the variable. So instead of saying 1 over cosine, we could say cosine theta equals -1/2. And then once you do that, you just do the inverse cosine again. And then the inverse cosine will be theta equals 120 degrees, or 2 pi over 3 plus 2 and pi. And you would have another outcome for this, which is 240 degrees plus 360, or 4 pi over 3 plus 2 and pi. If you got this, good job. If you didn't, just make sure to ask questions. And we're going to move on to the next example, which is multiplying and dividing. So we're just going to start off with the same method. We want to isolate the variable. Then I get 2 cosine theta equals pi, or square root of 3. And then the next method you will do is divide by 2, which you'll get cosine theta equals square root of 3 over 2. Then you do the inverse. When you do the inverse, your final answer should be theta equals pi over 6 plus 2 and pi. And you would also get 11 pi over 6 plus 2 and pi. The reason being is, if you remember the unit circle, that cosine is positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4 within pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. All right. And for example B, this one you will do on your own once you are finished. we will come back together. Now that you've done part B, let's see how you did. I will assume that you remember to, minus 1, minus 1. And then you get negative 2 sine theta equals negative 1. And then you will divide by negative 2, negative 2. After that, you would get sine theta equals 1/2. And then once you do that, you just remember to show you again, you get inverse, inverse. And then theta, you are left with pi over 6 plus 2n pi. And then remember, sine is positive on quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So your other answer would be in quadrant 2. Which will be 5 pi over 6 plus 2n pi. If you got that, good job. If not, it's okay. Just make sure you pay attention. And then last but not least, this one would be an example of trying to multiply. I'm not going to finish it. I just want to show you how you would do this. So you would, move to the other side. And then you get cosecant over 2 equals negative 3. And then to get rid of that 2, you have to multiply each side by 2. And then you get cosecant theta equals 2 or negative 2 rad 3. And then from there you do the inverse. And that's how you would do it if you have a number in the bottom. Okay? Now lastly, we're going to do example 3, which is factor. So your favorite F word, of course, we're going to go factoring. So let's begin. As you can see, we can factor common terms, which is the cosine theta. So when you're factoring the cosine, you would get cosine theta, parentheses, tan theta minus square root of 3 equals 0. And then from there, you can solve for cosine theta equals 0. And then you can solve for tan theta minus square root of 3 equals 0. And then we know cosine is 0. Let's draw a graph. Right here at 90 degrees and at 270, or at pi over 2 plus 2n pi. And also at 3 pi over 2 plus 2n pi. So that's one of your answers. And then for the other one, you're going to put the rad 3 to the other side. You'll get tan theta equals rad 3. And then we know tangent is positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. So from there, you would get the answer is, if you remember from the unit circle, pi over 3 plus 2n pi. And 4 pi over 3 plus 2n pi. All right. So part B, this one you will do on your own. Once you are finished, we will continue through the video. Now that you've done this one on your own, you can kind of picture, if you did, that this is a difference of squares. So we would do 1 minus sine theta, and 1 plus sine theta. And then you just solve for both. So you do 1 minus sine theta equals 0. And then you do 1 plus sine theta equals 0. All right, all you do is I will move sine to the other side, so you get sine theta equals 1. And then sine theta is 1 at pi over 2. And then 1 plus sine theta equals 0. You move on to the other side, you get sine theta equals -1. Sine is -1 at theta equals 3 pi over 2. If you got that, good job. If you didn't, don't worry too much about it. And last but not least, this one is a little tricky. As this one, you kind of have to see that we have 1 plus cosine theta plus minus 2 sine theta. And if you remember this, you could kind of remember your identities, which is sine squared plus cos squared equals 1. You do minus cos squared minus cos squared. And then you get sine squared equals 1 minus cos squared, which we could replace that with. So once we do that, we get 1 plus cosine theta minus 2 times 1 minus cosine squared theta equals 0. From there we get 1 plus cosine theta plus 2, or not plus 2, sorry, minus 2. Minus 2 plus 2 cosine squared theta equals 0. And then we combine like terms. We have this 1 and this -2. And I'm just going to put the 2 cosine squared theta in the front plus cosine theta minus 1. And then from there, we can factor. And that would be 2 cosine theta minus 1, and then cosine theta plus 1 equals 0. And then from there, you just solve. So you get 2 cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. You get cosine theta plus 1 equals 0. And then, you know, this one would just be, once you simplify it, cosine theta equals 1/2. And then this one is cosine theta equals -1. And then from there, you just do the inverse and you'll be finished. All right. At this point, is there any questions, comments, or concern for me? If not, I'll see you guys next time